Hello, my name is Allison De Loretta, and this is my self-improvement presentation. Did you know that simply reframing the way you view yourself and success can impact the trajectory of your life? This is the power that your mindset can have. The book I have chosen for this presentation is called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, written by Carol S. Dweck, and the purpose of this presentation is to inform you about how your mindset can affect your perspective on success and on life in general. There are two concepts from our course textbook that will be related to this presentation. The first one being perception of self. So self-awareness, self-esteem, self-concept, anything like that is related because in order to understand what mindset you have to recognize your patterns of thought and behavior and understand the way that you think so you know what mindset you have and if you need to alter that in some way. The second concept would be impression management. That's basically asking yourself, are you okay with the way that people see you and your levels of success, or are you trying to put up a different face so that people perceive you as something different than you actually are? With regard to mindset, I'll first be discussing how the brain is a muscle that needs to be exercised, followed by a description of how success is not always defined by intelligence. Moving from that, I'll talk about how praise can have a negative impact on your mindset. It's not always positive. And finally, I'll be telling you how I applied some of these concepts to my own life and how they impacted my mindset. So to begin, the brain is a muscle that needs to be exercised. In order to have a growth mindset, you have to be willing to exercise your brain. It can make new connections, it can learn, it can grow, but you do have to put in that effort and be willing to try, and also be willing to fail. Failure is okay. Dweck says, quote, "Nobody laughs at babies and says how dumb they are because they can't talk, they just haven't learned yet," unquote. This should be applied to people of any age. Just because you can't do something or you're not great at something doesn't mean that you can't succeed in the future if you're willing to try and change. Finally, physical health is also related to your brain's improvement because a balanced diet, sleep, exercise are all going to benefit your brain and its growth in the long run. Moving on, success is not defined by intelligence, contrary to what many people think. There is a difference between being smart and being a learner. So people with a fixed mindset often believe that they're smart, but they stick to what they know, they do what they know well, and they're not willing to try other things. On the other hand, people with a growth mindset are okay with not being so good at some things, but they're willing to try and they're always up for a challenge. There was a lab study conducted at the Brainwave Lab at Columbia in which people with both a growth and a fixed mindset were asked difficult questions and their brain waves were measured. So people with a fixed mindset were only interested in whether they had gotten the answers right or wrong. Dweck says, quote, "Even when they'd gotten an answer wrong, they were not interested in learning what the right answer was," unquote. So they didn't care about learning, they didn't care about growing, just they wanted to know, are they smart or not? Did they get the answer right or wrong? And that's the end of the story. On the other hand, people with a growth mindset cared less about results, but they were interested in learning the new information. So if they got the answer wrong, that's fine. They wanted to know what the right answer was, and then they learned from it. So that is the difference between being smart and being a learner. Moving on, I'll now discuss how praise can have a negative impact on your mindset. So we all grow up and we want to be praised for stuff that we do well and receive that validation. And if we see someone do something well, we want to give them praise and validation. However, this could actually have negative consequences. This happens when you praise someone or you're being praised only for your achievements. So, like if you get an A on a test, but whether you studied or not, you think you're validated because you got the A. If you studied really, really hard, but you got a C, you feel less validated because you didn't get the best grade, even though you worked really hard. So it's important to praise people for their effort rather than just their achievements. If people are being praised only for their achievements, they tend to have a fixed mindset and they're only focused on the outcomes. If they're praised for their effort, they're more likely to have that growth mindset because they're focused on the work that they put in, regardless of what the outcome turned out to be. Carol says, quote, more than 80% of parents told us it was necessary to praise children's ability so as to foster their confidence and achievement, unquote. So this is important for your mindset. You have to recognize that the work that you put into stuff is important regardless of if the outcome is positive or negative or somewhere in between. Moving on, I will finally discuss how I applied some concepts to my own life and how they affected my mindset. The way in which I chose to go about doing this was I tried to reframe the way that I thought about things. So the first thing I chose to do was reframe failure. Instead of saying, I am a failure, you say, I failed, and you move on. You learn from the mistakes that you made. You take them with you and you apply them in the future so you don't repeat those mistakes. This is a work in progress with me, but I actually do now take the time to stop and I pause and I think about it. And it's like, okay, this failure does not define me. It's not defeating me. I'll take what I can get from it and I'll learn and I'll move on. So that has actually been an improvement in my life. Moving on, I now take the time to celebrate when I do work really hard on something, even like if I am not happy with the outcome or I haven't even received the outcome yet, I'll acknowledge that I put a lot of work into something and I'll appreciate that I did that for me. So that has actually improved my mindset a lot. Just acknowledging when I've put a lot of effort into something I think is really important. And I think a lot of people could benefit from doing that, especially if they tend to be really hard on themselves. Just take a minute to pause and acknowledge that you have put a lot of work and effort into something. And even if it doesn't turn out great, you still tried as best as you could. And I think that is an important lesson to carry with you. Finally, the last concept I applied to myself was that it is okay to not have natural ability. Ever since I was a kid, I was always that person who was like really good in every school subject, immediately good at every sport or every hobby. I just, for some reason, had that natural ability when I was a kid, but it has decreased as I've gotten older. So I'm trying to be okay with it, but that area still needs improvement. So to conclude, reframing thoughts can increase your chance for success. Carol S. Dweck, in her book, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success, gives a lot of great information on how you can recognize your patterns of thoughts and behaviors and how you can alter them if need be. So it is important to remember to exercise your brain, strive to be a learner, not just be smart. Praise effort rather than ability, and finally, reframe your thoughts to improve your mindset. Thank you.